Welcome, everybody, to Panfish Weekly number 3. Along with Mark, I'm Lyle. And Mark, we got a great guest tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun. You guys will probably have a little more fun than me simply because I know zero about ice fishing, and that's what you guys been talking about.
Well, I think we're going to talk a little bit more than ice fishing because Mr. Brian Brosdahl, everybody calls you bro, right?
Yeah, that's why they call me Brosdahl.
Brosdahl. I'm sorry. Is it okay if we call you bro then during the interview?
You can call me anything you want, but I always say that bro is what my buddies call me, and Brian is the tax collector.
All right. Well, I don't collect no taxes. I'm not that lucky. I think everybody here chats in for a treat. Bros does a lot more than just ice fishing. He's a panfish slayer. I think we got a lot to learn from him, don't you think, Lyle?
I think so. And if you haven't seen the picture that we put up of him with that big old bluegill, man after my heart that catches them that size, because I don't get the opportunity very often to catch bluegill that size. That's just massive.
But come on up.
I need to. Sounds like.
You know, I got a couple of people here in chat that's actually here tonight that are really interested in going ice fishing next year. Maybe we'll have an outing and maybe we'll pay you a visit. What do you say, bro?
Yeah, or even come up in open water time. Just let me know ahead of time so I can make sure it works out.
We could schedule a trip. We got a bunch of people in chat here today. Actually, I saw Mr. Eric Massey in there. Eric Massey's a jig maker out here. He makes some pretty nice stuff. We can probably put his stuff to use with panfish, don't you think, Lyle?
Absolutely. Yep. He lives about 30 miles from me, thereabouts. We have quite conversations every once in a while online. Eric makes some wonderful jigs, and he's a super nice guy. So be sure to check him out on Facebook.
So, how'd you get your start pan fishing? Let's go back to the very beginning, bro.
Well, geez. First there was a fishing pole, and then I grabbed it, and then I started catching fish. I'm telling you right now. My first fish was a walleye when I was a little kid.
Really?
I caught some big walleyes on a big body of water, Lake of the Woods. It's a 500,000 acre body of water on the border of Canada, north of us, but that same winter, I caught some big slab crappies and big bluegills through the ice. And I'm telling you, at 5 years old, I just enjoyed catching those fish because there wasn't this long wait. It was faster, and there's something about panfish that are just absolutely, striking and fun to catch. Just how they have heart, how they fight, and using light line to catch them. So I would say at 5 years old. Catching panfish on the ice was a blast.
They are. The panfish are the, in my opinion, it's where everybody nearly starts, and they just go from there. Some of us never leave, and some of us leave and come back to the panfish area. But you've had great success with panfish.
Oh, absolutely. I love panfish. I like chasing crappies year round. Bluegill. I mentioned bluegills and crappies. Perch can be put in there also. Big jumbo perch. And we call them jumbo perch because this is a bait fish that in the right lake grows big. They get exorbitant, and they're probably one of the best eaten fish on the planet. And they're super expensive to buy in the store, so they're highly prized and sought after. But there's a lot of family history. People chase perch because their dad did, their grandfather did, their great-great-grandfather did. In Minnesota, perch were considered trash fish, but we had a phenomenal perch fishery, so people were visiting from other states, and we're like, what are you doing with all those? Laughing at it, and now they're like, hey, where'd you catch those? I want to go catch them. So outside, people in Wisconsin and Illinois knew about the perch way before most of the Minnesotans did, and then the worst thing they did, though, is to tell us how good they were, because now we're chasing them and putting pressure on them. But crappies are fun. The old paper mouth.
Yep.
They fight. They splash. Sometimes they think they're a bass. And they jump completely out of the water. They can't do that in the ice because they'd hit their head. We do have bass. Once in a while, we'll hook a largemouth or a big smallie. And in clear ice, you're watching them fight below your feet, swimming around like a picture window. and they'll hit their head on the ice once in a while. Oh, that's got to hurt. And then they hit their head again. They're trying to jump, but they can't. And it's just hilarious. And they don't really get hurt, but it's really neat, the fish you catch while you're chasing pans.
And when you're fishing, you had mentioned perch. Those are all inland perch, right? And when you're talking jumbo perch, what kind of sizes are you typically talking about?
Well, jumbo perch is different from place to place, and some areas, a 9-inch perch is big, or even there's areas they don't get much bigger than like an 8 would be a keeper. I consider jumbo perch when they're 11 on up. Up is the ceiling is dependent on how big they get in the area. A lot of the biggest perch I've seen in our area were 13 and a half inches, and you hear about these 14, 15s. But I'm a guy that says mouth closed, tail pinch. I want to see it on a tape. And now we're starting to see 14 and a halves up here because we got rusty crayfish. They've been around for a long time, but it just gives them that much more growth. So a lot of our perch lakes that do have rusties in them, they're growing super fast and they're getting really big. There's a lot of protein in those little critters. And so a big perch, I just tell people if it's 9 and up, you don't have to keep them all the same size, because a true jumbo perch, like a 12-inch, a foot-long perch, is less than 3% of the entire population. I don't want to sit there all day, because the small ones fry up nice too.
They do. Now, are you throwing those real big monsters back for breeding purposes, or is it not? Definitely.
One thing I got to tell people, when you open up a big perch, and I've seen it for many years, they're the ones that have gotten into trouble. They've been bit by a pike or some predator and escaped, or they might have more chance of parasites because they're bigger. They've lived in like bad lake neighborhoods, like where there's the wrong kind of like snails on the bottom or whatever. And the cleanest perch are always the smallest from, that I like to try to get 10 to about 11 and a half, and anything more than that goes back, because those really big perch are full of eggs. They have no belly meat at all. If you turn that knife and you scrape the skin, you're just going to get little strands. There's no belly meat because they're just full of eggs. The best perch, especially as we get later in the season, are the males. They have more meat, and you don't need to get as big of a fish, to eat. You 9 to 10-inch male perch are great, and after the female spawn, as the ice leaves, they'll linger.
They'll fatten back up then, right after they spawn.
Yes.
That makes sense. They're using their body's resources to produce eggs and reproduce and so on. So let me ask you this: do those perch, those really big perch, translate into bigger walleye and bigger pike and muskie?
Yeah, that's one thing we're finding out as we're trying to figure out. The DNR is managing our resource here in the Minnesota DNR, and they're doing a great job. But we're starting to see that strange things happen, like not from angling pressure, but some lakes lose all their jumbo perch. And mostly it's from pressure, from angling. But big walleye, a big pike is going to take down a bigger perch. When they're going to eat, they're going to go for a big one. So those bigger schools or little pods of perch, they're getting chased all the time by pike and walleyes. And so a lake that has a lot of slot walleyes that are protected of big walleyes, there'll be less big perch. That's just how it goes. You can't have, there's only so much biomass.
Right.
So we're seeing lakes that used to be like, well, just talk about Lake Winnipegosh, for instance, used to be the Mecca.
I've been there. Love that place.
It was the Mecca. And, there hasn't really been good jumbo perch fishing there for 16, 17 years. Yeah, people get them in the spring when they're coming in to spawn. There'll be some school. This is a giant lake, 65,000 acre lake.
Huge.
So somebody's going to be on them and catch a school of nice ones. But it used to be unilaterally all nice ones 16, 17 years ago. And then the slot made a whole bunch of big walleyes. It took a long time. It took like a decade to have all these walleyes from 23 to 26. And our big perch crashed. But now they're creeping back. And it just took a long time. And what they're finding out from predation and angling pressure both, and there wasn't hardly anybody angling on Winnie here the last 10 years in the wintertime. It was a shell of what it used to be. It used to be a great big party with thousands of people.
Right.
what happened is now the perch were spawning at a much younger age, so small perch were spawning to kind of keep the lake going. So nature knows what to do, and when that happens, you get fish that grow slower because they're concentrating on spawning, and that's why big bluegills are disappearing all over the place because we're taking the big ones, and what we need to take are the mediums,
The mediums.
not the small ones, not the giants, the mediums, and that's but in perch, the lake figures out what to do. I mean, it's crazy. They just know to spawn earlier, and if there's bigger fish in the lake, they will grow to that size to spawn, and it's a natural. It's in their
Very cool.
instinct.
And you had mentioned like bluegill populations going down, and I've heard a little bit about bluegill limits in Minnesota in certain lakes. There's a program out there where they're limiting like to 5 bluegills. Am I mistaken?
Yeah, no, that's right. And there's 5. Some have 10.
Okay,
And normally the statewide limit's 20.
it is okay.
Now there's a thing starting up called Quality Bluegill Initiative.
That's the one I was reading about. Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they're gonna say, oh, this is on every lake, but they ask people what they want. They want bigger bluegills, and they go, would you be willing to throw someone back? Oh yeah, I just want to catch them. I don't even see them anymore. They don't exist, and so they're not going to do it, but they're going to do select lakes and see how it goes. But at a 5 limit, it helps. 10 doesn't for some reason. Even though you cut it in half, it doesn't help because people will sort through to get the biggest 10.
Yeah.
And bluegills aren't in giant schools. They're little colonies. Like this weed bed is a colony, that weed bed is a colony, and when they dump into the basin, and then boom, 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 we're just hammering on them. Well, that colony just went down the highway.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, selective harvest it's in everything. It's in walleye, bass, muskie, but not saying keep tiny ones. I'd say keep nice mediums, but don't keep the tankers. The only one I got is this one that died, and that's for the sake of helping me in a shoot. And rarely do the big ones. I take really good care of them, but you're out in cold temperatures, and some of them kick, and I wasn't going to eat them. I just won't do that.
Gotcha.
There's a giant.
Yeah, and then these because people ask the perch on the wall, they look smaller, but watch when I go back here.
Yeah, those are big.
those are 16 and a half inch perch, and I took Heather to Cascade Lake in Idaho. I'm sorry,
Idaho. That's what I was going to ask you about.
Yeah,
next.
And we want to go check it out because we're kind of limited to the 14-inch ceiling here.
Mhm.
And I have caught 115 and a half on Leech Lake through the ice a long time ago. But we heard about it. Let's go do it because I'm hearing it get tremendous pressure and it can't last. It's only 9,000 acres. And we went there. You don't catch a lot. I mean, they're averaging 8 fish a day per group, and they're all a pound and a half. But we went away from everybody and we started fishing on our own. And I kind of left her and I started drilling. And she texted me a photo. She goes, "Is this a walleye in the bucket of water?" And I'm like, "No, you know what that is." And then she didn't catch nothing. Then the next day I said, "I'm staying there," because it took her 2 hours and it finally came through. But she didn't catch anything else. Next day I said, "I'm sitting here and I'm fishing, jigging. Oh, I can't take it." And I start drilling about a mile of holes.
Uh-huh.
And I just set the auger down to go fish. She goes, "What is this fish?" And she goes, he, laughing. And it's a 2.4 perch. It's 16 and a half inches. Wow. So I mounted them for her. And I caught more, but I didn't catch those. They're on their own. And I think these fish are eating kokanee, the little kokanee salmon that are swimming. And they're suspended. So if anybody's going there, I just threw you a major clue.
Are those kokanees? Are those natural or are those stalkers?
Those are stalkers.
Okay.
We didn't get any big ones, but we caught some big rainbow trout fishing for perch, and it's fun. I mean, the town was really neat. We had to stop for mule deer, and they don't care about the car. They just look at you and stand in front of you, and you don't honk at them. You just wait, and they just slowly walk away. And you got 100 mule deer in front of you in town, and there's elk up there. It's a ski community, and it's kind of a neat thing, and I'm glad we did it. But you can't. I mean, that's a long drive for me. I like fishing anywhere I can, and I'm not rich. I'm a working man, and it's one of those things. We did it,
Yeah, you got Lyle's attention when you mentioned elk and mule deer. That's for sure.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, well, you love it, Lyle, because it's one of those places. There's moose up in that area. There's elk, and there's me, a flatlander, because it's pretty flat in Minnesota. We have a mountain and it's a hill anywhere else, and so I'm driving through there, and I'm like, whoa! And I think I'm going too fast. I'm going speed limit's like 55, and I'm going 56, and I'm like, there's like no guardrail at this spot, and the road kind of slants towards the ravine, and I'm like, looking there, I'm like, that's a long fall. And then everybody's passing me, just whipping by me. They got the road memorized. They're like, Flatlander,
Yeah.
But if you're not used to mountains, be careful when you go there, because if it's wet and snowy, it's beautiful. Oh, it's really fun to go to. I asked an EMT driver I seen at a Subway. I said, I seen a lot of broken guardrails. Does anybody ever make it? She goes, nope.
Wow. So when the people in chat, including myself, when we're looking for panfish in general, whether it's bluegill, crappie, even the elusive warmouth that everybody talks about, perch, all that good stuff. What are some recommendations? I know a lot of people. Well, besides the bobber and worm, what are some other ways to go about it? Maybe not to make it more sporting, but to make it more interesting. Maybe to pick out some of the bit larger panfish that are out there. What are some of your recommendations for that?
Well, in open water, one thing I like to do, and this is a simple thing. No matter what, if you use a feather jig or a chicken feather, like a firefly jig or a flashaboo tie jig, which is like a gypsy jig, or just a hook, a gamakatsu hook. Sometimes I like to use a circle hook, so I'm hooking them in the corner every time. But I'll put a little tiny double-aught spinner blade, like a silver or gold blade, and 1 or 2 beads above the hook. And so when your line drops in,
you're talking in line, right, on your actual line. Okay.
Yes, below your sinker. So you pitch out there, and your chunk of crawler falls in there, and that spinner doesn't really spin. It just kind of seesaws down there.
Okay.
And it makes noise, and it's a little bit of a flash, and you got weeds, you got murky water, and the fish have a way to go spot it and find it they feel with their lateral line. They can see the flash, and I call it a flicker rig, because it's a flicker. It's not a spinner, so you're flashing them in, and it's just a simple thing. Just pick up a little spinner blade and a couple beads and put them on there, something bright like chartreuse or bright pink or orange bead, or mix them up, and simple. And then through the ice, small defined lures. I'm using some of these little tungsten flies, which work great in open water. I'll bring it up there. This is the punch fly.
Punch fly, okay.
Yep, and that's got that gold. Gold is a remarkably good bait for big bluegills.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see that it's got that curved hook. You just add a couple of spikes, maggots, or Eurolarva, whatever you want to call them. I just call them maggots, but or a little waxworm. Waxies work great in open water also.
They do.
They're smelly, and fish love them. But a little bait like that works great, and it gets right down there to it. I'm just going to grab another one here. There's a little tungsten baits. Like this is the Mighty Mouse, and that's tungsten, but you can see the big eyes.
Yep, got a few. Yeah, I use a few of those. Those work well.
Yeah, and it gets you right down there, but that's something you don't have to put away in open water. And that's what I'm finding, that some of the ice tackle is not getting put away in the open water time. They're keeping it out, and people are asking for it. And I actually have maggots here. I want to show you.
Are those maggots or spikes?
The spikes and maggots are the same thing.
Just one's colored?
Is mousy.
Okay.
So now you see that little point there?
Uh-huh.
I'll put that right there. You hook them in the dull end, and what I'm doing is taking that hook and just carefully just kind of grazing it and going through. And then that thing's wiggling on the hook. Now you want to put on a few different ones. I always like to say, if I was a bluegill, I'd want the biggest maggot sandwich I could ever have. And if I got to walk all the way to the fridge, I'm not going to come back with one strip of lunch meat on my toast.
This is true.
So I'll just put it on here where I can see it, and then I'm going to show you. And when you get a big pile, I call that the Medusa head. Looks like a head full of snakes.
Yes, sir.
That is bluegill candy. I mean, their mouths water when they see that.
Eric Massey, if you're still in chat, is there a place anywhere in our area you can pick them baits up like that, them little maggots? Because I have never seen them at any bait store in Southwest Missouri. And if they're not here, we got to find a place to get some of them.
You can order them, I believe. You can get them mail order, Lyle, I believe.
Well, that's what I'll probably have to do.
Yeah, you can, because they'll send them right to the bait shop or you.
Mm-hmm.
There's one of the largest wholesalers is Vados Express out of Spring Lake, Minnesota. But what I was just going to say about this, even in open water, sometimes you don't want giant baits. You want small baits. And a chunk of crawler sometimes makes your bait too big.
Too big.
And you can get it done with something like that. It's got a lot of stuff going on. But when that's sitting in the water, I'm telling you, get ready.
You know what that kind of looks like too, being red now, is those bloodworms we were talking about. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about those, let everybody know how important they are to the ecosystem and us as anglers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, bloodworms in the summertime are the midge flies. They look like little mosquitoes, and they're buzzing in little smoky clouds around the shoreline. And when they're in the lake, they look like this. And that's not a live bloodworm. That's a bloodworm that I designed for Northland Fishing Tackle.
That's one of those skeleton minnows that I'm searching for desperately.
It's a skeleton minnow, and they're pretty much sold out. But they're going to come with pre-rigs, and what you do is I made a little easy spot, a ringworm head that you could hook it, because it's too hard to hook that little chain. That's like you'd need a Hubble telescope just to look at that and hook it. So you take it and you break it right about here, if you want to, and then I got that broken piece right there that I could put on a bait, and it's so much easier to hook on a bait that you're using. You can even use it on the hex or the punch fly, but you're talking about something that really has a lot of action. But bloodworms are natural and very important to the ecosystem. Everything recognizes them. I've used these plastics in the Black Hills of South Dakota. Happened to be on fishing in a boat with some outdoor riders for trout, and you could see the rainbows. And they're throwing crawlers, they're throwing spinners, they're fly fishing, and they're not getting nothing. I hurried up, I tied on one of these on a little mini fireball head, pitched it out there. It's sinking, and it's only going down, like it's down to about 3 feet. The whole school turned and came at it. One ate it right away. Every cast, and it just sank in it. If it was slow, twitch, here they come. And they'd eat it because they recognize it instinctually. And I've used it everywhere from here to Connecticut on the East Coast, down to Florida. There's the original bloodworm, which I designed a long time ago. It's a flat version of this. So we couldn't call this a bloodworm. We had to call it the skeleton minnow because we already used bloodworm, and we don't want to say bloodworm 2. And I was thinking, I had skeleton minnow written down for something, and it just worked out good. So this is not an minnow imitation. It's actually a bloodworm imitation. And we talk about these diseases that kill fish or crayfish or something that could get into your waterways.
Correct.
All these invasives around. If anything ever killed bloodworms, our freshwater fishing would cease. They're vitally important to all freshwater fishing in North America. And so why not imitate what everything out there eats. If you use one of these, you can catch a walleye. You're going to catch your bluegills and crappies, but little bluegills will rip that tail off. But if you're in big water where there's big bluegills or crappies, you cannot get to bite. I've used these on Lake Ouachita in Arkansas on brush piles, and they got them. It's kind of cool. We can't have brush piles in Minnesota, and so I'm not saying there's any, but there is.
There is.
And we're not supposed to. I don't put any in, but I find them out there.
Yeah.
And we don't tell anybody where we find them. But down there's like this sign, and it has fishies on it, and there's an arrow right here.
Uh-huh.
The brush piles are like, I love this. This is great. And you just go to the next site, and you're fishing, and everybody's using spoons down there. Well, when it doesn't work for them, or they drop a minnow, you go over that same brush pile, and you drop that right in the brush, and lift it up slow, and poke, and you get these big slabs. It's amazing. So you might not be able to get this right now because it's sold out, but the original Bros bloodworm or skeleton minnow work great on little tiny tungsten heads. So you could check them out. And I forgot to mention one thing. They live in mud in the bottom of the lake.
Mm-hmm.
When they're midge flies, they go up in these little smoke column shaped things, and they have no mouth. They're not going to bite you. They hit your boat. They splat on your face. They're just kind of a messy thing in the summertime. But when they're up there doing their courting rituals, they drop their eggs, and their eggs actually physically sink. So wherever there's lots of these bugs in the air in the summer, there's going to be bloodworms. And mark that spot and check it out. I'm serious. Yeah. It's one of those little secrets that, and everything will be there because immature walleyes, everything eats bloodworms. Okay, enough on bloodworms.
That's one more thing to add to that. I've had fish that have been really finicky to bite. I'm marking them on the bottom, whether it's perch, bluegill, crappie, or bass. I'll put something on that resembles a bloodworm, and they'll come charging up like it's like they're coming to collect their lottery winnings or something. It's insane how they turn them on. It's ridiculous. So I just wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And they chase up to get it because they recognize it. It's instinct. And I've had situations where I was sweating bullets. You know, I have a camera crew there, and I have a writer there, and I know there's giant bluegills down there, and they won't bite a waxy, they won't bite red wigglers, they won't bite anything. And I drop that down and I just hold it still up high in this murky water, and they just come up and it's not nibble. They don't rip the tail off. Pumpkin seeds will do that once in a while, but if it's a little one, they'll rip the tail off. The big ones they got it, really good.
You was talking about real tiny jigs. How are you talking like 1/80th?
1/84th. I have some of those. I don't really go that light.
Okay.
I haven't had to. I'm thinking more along the lines of a 32nd ounce is about as small as you need to go for a really big bluegill, unless you're in ultra clear waters chasing red ears, because they're about the toughest thing on the planet. But a big bluegill, you could trick them into it on that size. And you don't even have to go super micro, but there are times I've had to use during cold fronts, like you get this nasty 20 below zero and wind. If it's 20 below zero and calm, it's really tough to get. So what I'll do is I'll go real tiny, but sometimes I just use a little micro fly hook. And you get these Gamakatsu, little size 14, 16, 18. I have them up to 28, and I don't use the 28s very much. Cause even with my cheaters, I'm afraid I'll inhale them if I sneeze.
Yeah.
And they're so small. And most of those tiny hooks, when they're smaller than 18, I lose most of them just out in the wind. I don't even know where they're at. They're in my jeans. I don't know.
Yeah, I've got some of those 24s to 28s. I use them for different things around here. I'm not going to get into that and give other people ideas of what I do, but you don't
horse them. You just, when you hook the fish, it's a gentle, slow roll with the reel.
Yeah.
And then when you get that big fish, scoop it with a Frable net as fast as you can. They got that fiberglass one, ultralight, carbon, and it's so light you can just go with one hand and just snap up the fish. I'm
Wow.
excited to use it.
Oh yeah, that sounds very interesting. So when you're talking, I want to go through the jig deal just a little bit, if you don't mind, Brian.
Oh,
When you're
absolutely.
talking about small, medium, and large size jigs, can you elaborate on that? And are you talking quarter, eighth, sixteenths, or what for bluegill and crappie and stuff like that? That a lot of our viewers are going to be fishing for this spring. Um, to me, a quarter is a little big, but
Mhm.
uh, what do you consider the big and the small end of the spectrum for jigs?
Well, in 10 feet or less, if I'm pitching warming areas where the crappies and bluegills are coming in to, feed on bait fish, because in the springtime they're not actually coming in to spawn. That's a misnomer. They're coming in to feed.
Mm-hmm.
Then they go back out. Then they come back in later to spawn, but not in the muddy areas. But anyway, so I'm using eighth to 32nd ounce, depending on how high they are. If I'm going along with my Humminbird side imaging and I see the fish are halfway down, then I'll use a 32nd or a 64th. So I'm never in that water column. And if you're pitching and you're not getting them and you lighten up, and even just a little crappie minnow or a couple, two waxies will loft a 32nd ounce jig nicely. And so I'll twitch it. Sometimes you got to read them. If they're down low, because crappies will drop and just kind of drag their belly on the bottom, then you're going to need an eighth ounce and let it sink. And because then when you twitch it, it's going to be a slow fall. And crappies like that slow fall, fast twitch. And I like to do a double hop sometimes and then let it fall. And they'll come in and hit it. And you could use a little tough tube, or you could use something like that on there. But I am a fan of hackles like chicken feathers, and the firefly jig is one of my favorite. And pink and white. Pink is just a really good panfish color no matter what.
Yeah.
Pink and white. Old fashioned yellow with black is really good. And sometimes black or purple with feathers is good if you're up higher because it silhouettes against the surface. Um, Glowhead with a combination of chartreuse and glow hackles is also good. But most of the time, the first thing I'm putting on is pink and white, and that's in a firefly jig. And then Flashaboo, which is a gypsy jig, is nice if you're in real murky water, and you can go with a pink and white, and that Flashaboo just refracts light. And then light line is very important. So you're throwing real light jigs, and if you use 6, 7, 8, 9 pound test, it's just hanging there if it's mono. So what I like to do is I like fluorocarbon, and I'll use a real thin, like 3 pound fluorocarbon, and I can pitch it out, and it's got a nice little sink rate. So you're throwing real light jigs, and it cuts the wind. Um, Even in panfish, I'll use braid, but a really thin, um, like a Sunline SX1 8 pound test, which is the smallest diameter they make, and it's like a half a pound diameter. It's really thin. You wouldn't even want to floss your teeth. You might cut it out of your gums. So thin. And you can pitch this stuff out against the wind and go super far. And a lot of times you're just using the weight of the minnow as the casting thing. But I do like a bobber, and I'll weight a bobber, and I'll use a light bite bobber. And you can add weights to the bobber, but I like to add split shot to it, or a bullet sinker, because a bullet sinker also will pull through any substrates that are still growing around the shorelines.
And that bullet sinker, how are you attaching it? Directly to the float or to the line?
Directly to the line.
The line, okay.
Just below the float.
Just okay.
And then what I'll do is I'll even, I love panfish. I'll get complicated. I'll put a little bead there to protect my knot above a micro swivel. And I have these swivels. Some of the swivels are too small. The bullet sinker will stick to them. So you put a little bead there.
Bead there.
And you pitch it on there. And you don't need a swivel. You don't need a swivel. You could tie your bead in there. But if you're going to use a sinker, you want to have maybe a bull shot sinker, which is a bullet sinker that crimps on, or split shot's fine. There are times when the fish will eat your jig when you throw it in. They'll bite at the split shot. They'll bite at your bobber, but that's not very often. So And then there's times I just use a plain hook, a small split shot, and just a little Gamakatsu hook, a little Aberdeen hook, and you'll hook a minnow and pitch it out, and I'll pull it. Now hook it in reverse through the dorsal. I'll pitch it out, and I'll pull it, and then I'll let it kind of slowly sink, but it's struggling. Then I'll pull it again and let it slowly sink. And the only thing I'll have is a little bead by the hook, little pink bead. And sometimes that's all you need. Or just slip bobber and sit on them, and
Yeah, exactly. Will that bead, that little pink bead that you're using, is that kind of to constrain the minnow from moving, or is that actually just for weight for casting?
it's a focal point for the fish.
Okay.
A little pink bead is a focal point for a fish, and you want small. Sometimes a bigger one's okay, depending on how big of the fish are. But a little pink bead goes a long way. Or fluorescent hooks. I mean, I must have, I don't know how many umpteen Gamakatsu fluorescent pink hooks, and I have them in size 8, and I got them in size 6. You don't need to go too much smaller when they're feeding in the spring than a size 8. You can use some of that small stuff, but I'm using that in the middle of winter. And when we're ice fishing here in the middle of winter, you're also ice fishing in the south, because the mid-south and south, because when I've been there, you're fishing vertical over deeper water, and the fish are kind of suspended, just sitting there, or on the bottom, sitting there. And the only difference between ice fishing and boat fishing in the wintertime is I'm standing on ice floating, and you're standing on fiberglass or aluminum. But it's still, this is a time of year where the fish are moving slower, they're feeding less, you've got little windows, opportunistic times for them to feed, and you got to be there. But it's all time well spent, because you're waiting for the bite, you're waiting for the fish, and you're on the water, and I'm on the water even if I'm on the ice. There's something magical about ice I want to describe to people who've never ice fished. You're not pitching to the fish. The fish aren't way off to the side. The fish are right below your feet. And if you're on a foot of ice and you're in 8 feet of water, that fish could be 5-6 feet below you. And I'm using an AquaView underwater camera. I've got it hanging in my house, my fish house, a little quick flip tent. And I'm looking at it straight ahead, not down on the ground. And I'm watching my jig. When the fish comes in, sometimes I grab it backwards and I wait. And they spit it back out, those big bluegills. And then the jig will sit there and they'll eat the waxworm. You set the hook. So I'm not looking at my rod tip. I'm not looking for a drop or a rise in a bite. I'm watching it on the AquaView, and they come in and eat it. And then I set the hook. And it's fun. And I do that in a boat also. If I'm spot locked, or if I have my 2 talons down, because I put 2 talons on my boat. I guide for walleyes all summer, and I'm a panfish guy. I'm selfish. I don't want to share them with people, because if one thing I know, and I've learned for the last 28 years, the panfish school that you show somebody is their new favorite spot forever. So if I get to know people, we might slide into a panfish spot, but I got to know that they're not going to.
Or out of towners that aren't going to come back anytime soon, right?
Oh yeah. It's or just I know people that just like catching them and just get a meal of fish, but it is like, hey, here's my treasure chest. Look at all these gold coins. I'm going to set it right here. We'll see you later.
Yeah. We had some people having a little discussion in chat where they're having a problem with bluegill swallowing the hooks, and I recommend a longer shank hook or a longer shank hook on a jig. You have any other recommendations for that?
Absolutely. Look into circle hooks. They make circle hooks for panfish. Gamakatsu is the one I've been using. I researched it, and there's some circle hooks that I found them when I fished saltwater years ago. But I brought circle hooks up, and for panfish, they'll have it down in their throat, and when you don't set the hook, you just start reeling, and it goes to the corner of their mouth. And if you catch 50 bluegills, would be a really good day, even if they're small to big. You might have 1 or 2 that's down there, and for the price of the hook, I just get really close and I snip it off, and then let it go because the acids in their throat will dissolve it and they'll live. And
Yeah.
if you're going to keep them, you can get it out later because they don't need that when they go in the bucket.
Here's something I've noticed when I keep, whatever fish it is for bait that I have that swallows a hook, and I'll do that. I'll trim the line rather than kill the fish because they're worth something to me later, right?
Yeah.
I'll look in my bait tank and there's the hook on the bottom of the bait. They just seem to work them out for somehow, some way.
Yeah, that's what I have faith that if I got I've released some giant bluegills, and when I'm taking photos, I like to drill holes, especially shallow bluegills. I'll drill multiple holes 3/4 of the way through on the ice, about 2 feet, and then I'll just go down so that you just pop through and the water starts seeping up, so they can't get down, and then the other holes here. So I could take a fish and take a couple of pictures, and sometimes the light has to be perfect. You got a professional photographer for the company or whatever, and I'm not out to kill these big ones, so we take a couple pictures and then it's back down. Then you can pick up another one, so you never wear them out.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you ever want to get a good picture of gills, just have a little live trap that you made in the ice, but don't keep them there if it's really cold too long. Because the water temperature is 39 in the bottom of the lake, and right there it's 32.
32.
So, but that's the best way to go. You can't bring water out of the lake and transport it. So, if you bring bait water from home or from your bait shop, that water is going to come out of the well at pretty much about 50 degrees. If you throw a little snow and cool it down, you're going to have water that's a little bit warmer, but you don't want it too warm, and they're going to go nuts. But that keeps them alive too. You just can't transport water from the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Good
questions, guys.
Them are really good questions. You're doing guiding now, just balls to the wall, I guess, because of what you do. But if I understood you earlier, you get out and you just start taking off drilling holes, and you're dropping your transducer of your fish finder or whatever in these holes. Now, if you don't see something there just right away, you're drilling another hole someplace and another one and another until you find what you wanted. Is that how you do that?
Absolutely. And I've learned just from being out there a lot. I used to go out and drill holes. They took a picture one time and I had like 100 holes around me. So I didn't really accomplish anything. Now I'm drilling holes about 30 feet apart. Sometimes if I'm fishing perch on a flat, I'll go 70 on big bodies of water.
Wow.
And how do you do that on a snowmobile? So I'll go on a snowmobile when there's a foot or less. I don't have to get off the sled. I drill a hole and I keep going, drill a hole, keep going. And every hole I kick flat so that when I come back, they're sitting there flat. And I'll drill for, maybe 300 yards, turn around, and then I fish them through, or I scope them through. So I'll go through, drop an AquaView camera because the micro camera is so small, and it's on a reel that you can reel up now, and I'll have it sitting there on the sled. Or if I'm in my truck, I'll drill in reverse. So I'll drill a hole, jump in my truck, and I got the auger on my lap door open, and I go back and kind of eye it up. Okay, jump out, drill hole. And I do that over and over, and then I fish it forward with all my electronics on my dash. But you got to remember to put it in park. Sometimes I forget. Running after my truck in reverse.
And you're doing all this when it's 0 degrees or thereabouts?
Yeah. Tomorrow when I meet the guys, it's going to be about minus 10 or 12, and the next day it's supposed to be a high of minus 8, I think. So it's going to get down to like minus 22. But the wind is what's going to hurt because it's going to be windy both days. So definitely going to have them leave their truck running, and they're from Missouri. So I don't want them to be in misery. So I'm gonna let them sit in their truck till it's warm. I'll set up the house, get the heater going, and they can go from a warm truck to a warm house and start fishing. And I'll just fish outside and kind of scout and check in case I have to move them or something. But it's when it gets below zero, when it gets past 10 below, when it gets closer to 20, the slightest breeze is cold to me. I mean,
I'm thinking so.
it's painful, but I'll fish outside. I'm using fish monkey gloves. I got the little gloves. These are like a little rain suit. I can squish them up like this. These keep my fingers dry, which is the most important thing. When I'm running around in that cold temperature, I'll use the heavy duty ones because I don't want frostbite. I've had frostbite. I've had minor frostbite where you're like, did I get frostbite? And yeah, I think so. But I've had turned black and lumps, and drainage from being completely burnt. But it was a lot colder than this. It was minus 40 to 62 below is the coldest I've seen.
That's pretty crazy. We got Papa Ed was asking if you know how to use a chopstick to get a hook out, and I kind of figure you might.
Yeah. And a little slot at the end is nice because you can push it into the hook and reverse it. Sometimes you can do it with your finger. These fish don't have teeth in their mouth. A big crappie, you'll run the line up and your finger fits right in the curve of the hook, and I push it back. But don't push your finger into the hook. But yeah, the chopstick's nice and a really fine needle nose. And most of the time, even with panfish, I'm tipping the panfish upside down, and I'm going in through the gill without touching the gill, like the game of Operation. And I'm turning the hook backwards to pop it out with minimal amount of tearing. I call it Dr. Bro Kevorkian in the house, and then I pull the hook away. And if you're real careful, I mean,
they're fine.
Like, thank you. When it leaves, you can hear it.
Yeah. We have a good friend of ours that spends a lot of time in a lot of the chat rooms every week. He's Creole catfishing. It's Jeremy DeFore. He lives in the state of Louisiana, and he don't know what freezing is. He don't think he wants no part of that 62 below.
Well, he's got 30-degree weather coming his way, so he was panicked about that earlier. I saw a couple posts of his.
Well, get used to that 30 degrees and just come up here when it's 30.
There you go.
I had two fellows come up when it was they're from Louisiana, and they came up, and I took them fishing. This was about 5 years ago, and they got on the plane. It was 88 degrees. When they got off the plane here, it was minus 10. They thought they made a big mistake. And I remember I was out there, and they're in a rental truck on the shore, and all I remember is they're bundled up, or the big gloves, too big for their hands, and they had that hood where there was like, I could see like one eye like this. I'm like, how you doing? He goes, I'm okay, but my nose is a little bit cold.
Yeah,
I'm standing out there. I don't even got any gloves on. I'm like, okay, well, cover up your nose. I can't see if I do that.
It's all about what you're used to, right, bro? I mean, I don't think I could handle a summer in Louisiana. I'm not even going to kid you. I don't think I want to do that.
Way. I'd melt.
Yeah, I melt like ice cream.
Yeah,
I don't even make it to the eating part. I mean, I just melt. And my hat's off to you, those people who can sit out there in 90, 100 plus, 105 degree heat.
Yeah,
I've done that in walleye tournaments in South Dakota. We had 104 degrees for 3 days. We had 102, and then 104. And I was out there, and I'm like, it's dry out there, so it doesn't feel as hot as it would in Minnesota. And I'm like, man, it's time to get off the lake. And I remember going back to this packed access, giant, big launch, just full of trucks from all over the place. I was the only one there. So everybody was gone. I was still out there at 2:00. They all left at like 11 or noon.
Oh wow, that makes it easy pickings.
Oh, it was easy. It was easy to load my boat, but one thing too with the ice fishing, those guys from Louisiana caught some pike and they caught some walleyes, and they had a blast. They were yelling at the fish. I wasn't in their house. I'm like, "You guys okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're just having a good time here." And I'm like, don't yell down the hole. You might scare the fish. They were yelling at the fish when it was coming into they could see it because we were in about 8 feet of water and it was right there. And they got a big walleye, just a monster. And they got a little northern. And I said, well, which one is your favorite? The little northern, because of how it came in and slashed and flew around. And it was a lot of fun. And they had so much fun. They caught other fish too. A little bit later, I got something in the mail from them. It wasn't a bag of money. It was an alligator head.
Really?
I thought that was cool.
Oh, yeah. I don't need none of it. Dead would be the way I'd want an alligator. I don't want no part of them any other way.
Yeah, well, that's the only alligator around this area is that head that I got. And but we do have our share of mosquitoes.
I bet
we have
you do.
If you're going to walk around in the grass too far. But that's about it for biting things. But yeah, I can't imagine having one of those things coming at you.
There was actually a bet with Creel that says he'll come ice fishing if we can go alligator hunting with them, and we all said yes.
I know. I joke around some.
That's way cool.
Your alligator head.
Brian, we're getting close to running out, and I know you have a trip tomorrow. Tell everybody where they can check your stuff out to find you if they want to get a guided trip with you or come catch you at some seminars. I know you have some coming up.
Yeah. Well, just go to brosguideservice.com, and I'm already booking stuff for summer, and I have a lot of stuff open. So if you want to come up and catch some walleyes, I have some lakes where you can actually watch them and pitch to them, and I have other lakes where we catch walleyes and smallmouth bass. And come on up and out. The panfish, walleyes pay the bills up here, so I guide for walleyes primarily. And but we catch everything while we're doing it. We catch jumbo perch, we catch northerns, and then if you come up in the winter, let me know ahead of time because I don't go out as many days in the wintertime because I do a lot of ice fishing promotion, and I also have College of Ice, which we just had not too long ago.
Yes, sir.
The season ended for that, and but I had a great time on here with you guys. And if you want to come up, I have a Ranger boat with a 300 horse, and so you're going to be in good hands. And if we don't get up, I'm going to burn a lot of gas.
Hey, so if they want, let's say they give you a call and they want to schedule a trip for some perch, because we got a lot of people curious about perch in the group. Yeah. Is that something you can arrange with them?
Yeah. Good times to come would be in June, beginning of August, or September. And September's a busy time. I mean, I'm sure a lot of resorts are already booked for that perch, but what people don't understand is that June and July's okay. Every month has a flare up in perch, and so come whenever it works for you. We can go for perch, maybe for walleyes both, but perch kind of fit in the same thing with walleyes. You don't have to take your jig off that you're catching walleyes on when you're fishing perch because it's the same thing. You just using a smaller minnow.
Smaller minnow.
Very cool. For sure. Just let me know and go to brosguideservice.com. And for this winter, I'm pretty much set for the amount of days that I can go. But if you're thinking next year, let me know. I get people from Texas, Louisiana, Miami, and they want to come up and ice fish. And some of them can't believe how warm it is out there in that tent. And you drive right up to it. And others really find out that it's cold.
Yeah. You got to promise if you get a call from a guy by the name of Jeremy DeFore and from Louisiana, and he says he's coming up there when it's 20, 30, 40 below, you got to let me know because we're going to light up the internet with that. If he ever
Yeah, for sure. And we can even give them a good old fashioned cold ice fishing trip where we take sleds out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
But
no hut to get in, just on the ice.
Yeah, and all fishing's fun. Whenever I can get a chance to go to Florida, I don't have to go offshore. I go there to visit. I got family in Florida, and stuff, and then I don't have to go offshore. I can fish at a pier or surf fish, catch pompano or redfish. It's a blast, or even in a kayak. But I do like going offshore too. But I don't get to do it every day if I'm there for a week.
You know, we just started this show. You're our third week guest. We're so happy that you agreed to do a show with us. But we're looking for huge things in the panfish world to really pop. We would really like to get you back on the show when the weather warms up, so you can tell us about the spring and the summer and what's to expect in your world then, if you'd be interested in doing
absolutely. Definitely check in with me around the second week of May.
Okay.
Because the first week of May can be really good for crappies, but by the second week of May, more stuff will be established. There'll be that spring feeding mode on some lakes, because every lake has a different time that it's going through a temperature zone. So even if you missed the crappies over here, they're still going on over here.
Over there.
Oh, that's awesome.
A real secret.
I call those ice out crappie. That's my favorite time of the year. Right, not even it's before spawn, right after the ice goes out. That's my favorite time to go after them.
Absolutely, and it's I'm trying to get a picture here. You know, they're there's a me with a crappie on my snowmobile.
Oh yeah,
you can see
snowmobile. There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
And it's been warm. You know, I got my coat on and stuff, probably because it cools off when you're cruising on a sled. And if you look at the background, it's fog.
That's fog behind you?
Yeah, it's all foggy out there. And then this is what some people like. I had some guys from Indiana come up.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Now we're talking.
I've had them for several years. They come up the same time, and he throws that fish back. And some of the group don't even eat fish, but they just want to catch some big bluegills. They want to catch some big crappies. But if they get perch, they stick to their hands and they end up in the bucket. I don't care. Keep it. You know what I mean? They'll eat the perch and walleyes, but they want to get pictures with these big bluegills. And but I have to get to know them first. And here's a eel pout photo.
There we go. That's what I'm talking about.
There you go.
And they're starting to really bite right now in northern Minnesota. You just got to find the
eel pout is burbot for everybody out there in chat. You guys have heard the name from me, so
yeah, burbot. In the East Coast, they're called lawyers.
Lawyer fish. Yep. Look at that.
Looky there.
That's pushing 11 inches right there. But anyway, it was great being on here, guys. And you guys have a great winter. And I hope you're setting a lot of hooks. And
we're trying.
Brian,
thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
See you soon.
Yep. Have a good night.
All right. Have a good night.
What a great guest, man.
Absolutely.
Full of knowledge. He's just a super guy to have in the show with us. I knew most that it would be a great show with Brian on here. He knows so much. He guides all over up there for every kind of fish, but they don't have big flatheads and big blue cats and stuff like we got.
They got some big channels up there, but
some big channels. They do have that.
You know, maybe before we let everybody go, maybe we should holler out to some people, because I know Bro had he's got an appointment in the morning, so we wanted to get him and let him talk and say what he had to say. So let's say hello and thank you to everybody. Lau, what do you say?
I'm good with that. I'll take off and then I'll stop. How's that?
Sounds good, my friend.
Fishing with JBT, Alan Pershaw, Lynn Leeper. Alan, I hope I got that reasonably close. If not, you'll have to send me a message. Tell me how I can make it better. Pawpaw Ed, Muskrat Adventures, Georgia Fisherman getting hooked with D, the better part of that deal.
Amen.
Muskrat Adventures, Sunfish Assassin, Mike Irwin, Jason Ward. Go ahead, Mark.
All right, we had Two Stands Fishing. I think you said Country Boy Catfishing. Creole, if you haven't mentioned him. Least favorite child, Fishing with the Chad. Let's see, Jason Ward, you mentioned. D, I'm going to say hello to D again because she's worth two hellos.
Absolutely.
Lynn Leeper, you said hello. Mike Irvin, Muskrat Adventures, Pat Pyatt again, Sunfish Assassin. You guys hung around. Thank you very much. I do want to remind everybody that I have a show on tomorrow night. We're going to do a year in review. It's been approximately a year since I got onto YouTube. Kind of slow at the beginning, but I'm going to have my friend Lyle, my friend James, and my friend Chad. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, and I have a special surprise on Sunday on my channel. It's going to get announced tomorrow via thumbnail and links on my personal page and my catfish and crappie pages. So keep an eye out for that. I think you guys will be happy to see that. It'll be very cool way to spend your Saturday.
Yeah, we're looking forward to some of that. Kevin Baker's in the house, fishing finds, fishing with the Chad. There's always one.
Robert Andrews.
Lynn Leeper getting hooked. We got D. Muskrat Adventures. Did we get Roger?
We did. I got Roger.
I know Ace was in there. Catmandu.
Georgia Fisherman.
Avid was in there. Palmetto Cats was in there.
Yep, Kevin was in there. So how are you feeling that Panfish Weekly is going, Lyle, while I got you here for a few minutes?
I think that it's going really well. We've worked really hard, Mark, to get some quality guests. We got some more coming. Let me see if I can I can't remember right offhand who next week's guest is, but it's another good one. I mean, at some point, I want to do a show just you and me, and you tell us how you catch your crappie.
You let me know. I can let you know how I catch my crappie and how I catch my bluegills, because I catch a lot of bluegills for bait. So I got a couple of methods that I want to talk to you, and I also want to talk to you about your drop shotting techniques for them.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to go with that. Now, the guest for next week is another guy that we all grew up watching when we was coming up, O'Neill Williams. He is a outstanding guy to visit with. O'Neill is getting up there in years, but he's just as sharp as a tack. And man, he's like Babe and Brian. He catches them fish every time he goes out, and he's been on the show for a long, long time. I don't know that he's doing much of them anymore, but he'll be a really fun guy, very outspoken in his age, but
that's how we like him. That's why we love you, Lyle.
That's right.
I see a total angling experience. Hey, what's going on, sir? Sometimes if people are just watching the show and they don't chime in right away, their names won't come up in the list. But if you do, we'll always try to mention you guys.
There's Carolina Catfish. Yeah, if you don't get upset if we don't get your name, because we'll get it next week. We usually go through them a little bit better, but when you get guys on here like we've had the last 3 weeks, we want to get right to it and let them tell you things that you might not ever hear anywhere else. And in the last 3 weeks, we've had some guys that shared some knowledge that they probably wouldn't have told anybody else.
They got something to say. We got to let them say it, right, Lyle? That's the way I look at it.
Exactly right.
I think maybe if we do like this little after, we'll call it our little after party for a couple of minutes, we can say hello to the people and answer any questions or anything they have.
Absolutely. And if you guys have any questions, Mark catches a lot of crappie. And I'm basically a bluegill fisherman, but we're probably going to get together sometime this year and catch some crappie and maybe some bluegill. And we hope to catch some perch when we're up in Mendota. I know you and me and James Dockery.
We're going to try
that. I don't know how excited Chad is about it, but the three of us are excited.
Once he tastes them, I think he'll be all right. You know what? I think I'm going to give Brian a call before we head up there and see if maybe he can give us a couple of tips on where to look on those.
That'd probably be a good idea. I don't know if he's familiar with them lakes, but he'll know where they're biting at on his water, and we'll just apply that to a different area.
Cool. Very cool. Well, Lyle, thank you again for letting me be a part of this. I had a wonderful time tonight.
Two Stan says, O'Neill Williams, I can't wait for him. He is awesome. Always felt like he was just the average guy, but knew the whole bunch. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, he's a good guy. Mark, it's been a pleasure having you on the show with me. We're going to continue to have a good time every Thursday night at 8 Central, 9 Eastern, right after James Dockery and Chad with the what is it?
With the bait shop.
What is it?
It's the bait shop.
Well, oh,
The bait shop.
Bait
I'm
shop.
fishing with the Chad. It was a great show.
I listened to it right up till I had to get out. I just want to give them guys a little
business.
Yeah, but that's okay. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next Thursday night. Don't forget
Good night, guys.
Don't forget to check Mark's show out tomorrow night.
Tomorrow. Bye-bye.